The victorious strategist only seeks battle after the victory has been won, whereas he who is destined to defeat first fights and afterwards looks for victory. You'll stand the best chance of winning if you can make one of the target hands by the river. To do that, you need to flop a significant part of that hand. And your best chances of flopping a milestone depend on starting with very specific hole cards. All others should be folded without hesitation. Chapter 5 is about setting minimum standards for the hole cards you're willing to play. Keep in mind as I present this information that these are very conservative standards, those played by the traditional rock. I'll show you how to safely relax these standards in a later chapter. Now that we have our list of playable milestones, we can determine which hole cards are playable. Let's begin by examining non-adjacent unsuited connectors. 8-10 unsuited is typical of this starting hand. It will flop a 4-card open-ended straight just 7% of the time, which represents a break-even point of 14. Clearly, having 14 players in a hand is unachievable. So, non-adjacent unsuited connectors would appear to be unplayable, except for the fact that they also flop a 4-card gut-shot straight draw 11% of the time. If you find yourself in a game in which 6 or more players are generally still in the hand after the flop, then you could play a gut-shot straight draw. In such cases, you would be justified in summing the probabilities of flopping a 4-card open-ended straight draw and a 4-card gut-shot straight draw in determining whether to play a non-adjacent unsuited connector. 7% plus 11% equals 18%, yielding a break-even point of between 5 and 6. Thus, non-adjacent unsuited connectors could have a break-even point of about 6, which is playable in very loose games. But in tighter games, the break-even point could be as high as 14, which is clearly not playable. Also, keep in mind, I chose to represent this starting hand with 10-8, which has only one rank of separation. As you increase the ranks separating your hole cards, 10-7 for example, the chances of flopping something playable decrease rapidly. Next, let's examine adjacent unsuited connectors. I'll represent this starting hand with a 10-9 unsuited. As you can see, it'll flop a 4-card open-ended straight draw 10% of the time, which gives us a break-even point of 10. So if it weren't for its ability to flop a gut-shot straight draw 14% of the time, we'd likely never be able to justify playing adjacent unsuited connectors. But as long as we can generally count on there being 6 players still in the hand after the flop, which is a very loose game, we can add these percentages together to yield 24% probability of flopping something playable when starting with adjacent unsuited connectors. This is close enough to 25% to assume the break-even point of 4. Thus, adjacent unsuited connectors are playable in loose games. The next starting hands we'll examine are pocket pairs. I'll represent this hand with ace-ace. Notice that you can expect to flop 2 pair 16% of the time and trips 12%, for a combined 28% probability of flopping something playable. But again, because not all games will give sufficient pot odds to justify playing 2 pair after the flop, you'll need to exercise some judgment as to whether combining these figures is justified. If so, then the break-even point for pocket pairs is 4, playable in almost any game. Otherwise, it's between 6 and 8, indicating a very loose game. Also note that in playing 2 pair, we're assuming that the board has paired, and we're able to claim that pair as our own. This is a common tactic that I'll explain more thoroughly in the chapter on bluffing. Now we'll examine suited hole cards. Let's represent this hand with King of Clubs, 3 of Clubs. With just under a 12% probability of flopping a 4-card flush or better, you will need 8 players paying to see the flop to justify playing suited hole cards. You may never see games this loose in casinos, but this is not unheard of in online games. However, if you were to play only high suited hole cards, then if you miss flopping your 4-flush, there's a chance you could still flop some other playable milestone, like 2-pair or one of the straights milestones. The final starting hands I'll mention are the suited connectors, represented here by 10 of diamonds, 9 of diamonds. By combining the numbers from adjacent connectors and suited hole cards, we achieve at least a 17% probability of flopping a playable milestone. And in loose games, where you can justify combining their total probabilities, that figure goes as high as 34%. So, suited connectors offer the best probability of flopping a playable milestone. Now let's review what we know about playable hole cards. Unsuited, non-adjacent connectors, like 8 of diamonds, 10 of clubs, hardly ever receive sufficient pot odds to justify playing them. Unsuited adjacent connectors, like 8 of diamonds, 9 of clubs, will frequently receive sufficient pot odds. Pocket pairs are all generally playable, from the lowly pocket 2s all the way up to pocket aces, though your best chances lie with higher pocket pairs, which still offers some winning chances even if you miss your intended milestone, trips. Suited hole cards are all generally playable, though the higher they are, the better. We'll take a closer look at these when we examine flushes in more detail. And finally, suited connectors like 9 of clubs, 10 of clubs are the most playable hole cards you can be dealt. There are some combinations that you wouldn't want to play as straights or flushes, like 2-3 suited perhaps. Such hands are troublesome because if you make your target hand, you're left not really knowing how to bet. But most suited connectors offer excellent opportunities. Hello, this is Tyson Wood. Our goal here at Strategic Hold'em is simple, to help you play smarter poker. You can help us spread the word by sharing our web address with a friend. And you can help us keep the lights on at Strategic Hold'em by making a donation. We plan to continue our research and release more poker tutorials as new results come available. If you have any topic suggestions, please send them to feedback@strategicholdem.com. All your comments are welcome. We'd particularly like to hear about your most successful bluffing tactics. On behalf of the entire team at Strategic Hold'em, good luck and good hunting.